there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And today I am jumping back into the war genre with 2008's The Hurt Locker. So, as I said all the way back when I did my last war film, which I've genuinely forgotten what it is, it's so long and I've done so many of these, that at the time I remember distinctly saying this war genre has been one that I have struggled with over the years. It's not a genre I engage with particularly well. Now, saying that, there has been a massive shift for me in my perception of what I suppose a good war film is, and what the sort of structure of a good war film, but what makes a good war film. Particularly with the 1917, the Sam Mendes film, I think it really altered what I expected from a war film, and I think it's come with maturity that I now understand the tenets of a good war film. And I have to say, The Hurt Locker has simply enhanced that. So very broadly speaking, it follows several members of a bomb disposal unit during the Iraq War, and it's a very intense character piece that's about, I suppose, the there is something quite psychological about it. It's very much examining, the mindset of people who do something. Bomb disposal, even within the military, is an intensive field, simply because it's understood that, in trying to defuse a bomb, there is a certain amount of discipline, of steel, of resolve that someone has to have, and even some of the most confident, well-trained soldiers wouldn't have the nerve to be able to do something like that, with still the very high chance that despite your best efforts, the bomb could still go off. And no matter what kind of equipment you have, if you're defusing a bomb and it goes off while you're doing it, there is almost a zero chance of survival. Like, it's a given that if it explodes in your face, you can't survive that. It's quite interesting sort of watching this, obviously being the Marvel fan that I am, where two of our leads are Anthony Mackie and Jeremy Renner. Now, people would say that Jeremy Renner is sort of your main lead and Anthony Mackie is sort of your second. Personally, I would have been tempted to flip that, considering the way the film opens, but I can discuss that shortly. But again, two Avengers, both in a film well before their Marvel careers started, sort of bouncing off each other and really having this tense, quite testosterone-filled relationship that's quite interesting to see, especially considering it's two actors who, within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you don't actually, I think, ever get to have any interaction at all. There is a third actor, although funnily enough, named I think it's Eric. What did I say his name was? Gallagher, I think, or something like that. And I think it's a shame because he is definitely the third lead or the second supporting actor in this. Unfortunately, he didn't go on to the MCU, though he has had a very successful career in his own right, including being in Jarhead, which means he was in two prominent war films of the early noughties. And yes, this is very much a testosterone-filled, male-dominated narrative about the experiences of men during war, even though, considering it's set during the Iraq War, this is a time, really a transitional period, where we see more active women in the field, but I don't know. I think considering the time that it was, I'm not, and I think what they wanted to explore in the narrative, they kept it very male-centered. Now, saying that, of course, it is directed by Catherine Bigelow, and I think some time ago I talked about the challenge of, say, of a male director directing a female-centric narrative, and whether that there is enough empathy and understanding of a female experience that a man would be able to direct that. And I discussed the sort of pros and cons of that, and the fact that it's not a simple, straightforward answer. And I think men should be direct female centric issues, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they will be able to achieve that core empathy. But it's important that that happens. Similarly, with this, I honestly think Catherine Bigelow just taps into something about the experiences of these men in war and the sort of relationship between men on a battlefield that, frankly, it's one of those situations where if you didn't know who directed The Hurt Locker, people will say, "Oh wow, it must have been a military man, someone who has experience who directed this." Whereas the fact that it really does come from a female's perception of a male-dominated environment, I think it's actually done really, really quite well. And of course, won Best Director, Best Picture, so it's but Oscars, sorry. So it's kind of a given that this is an incredibly well-respected film. But as I say, this is really a powerful character piece about psychology. And I think, as I said earlier, my understanding of war films, and I think the reason I didn't appreciate them at a younger age is, and that it's taken maturity to be able to appreciate what's important within a war film, is that a war film is about almost the inability to for one individual to be important within the context of a greater war, and that the less that happens in that film, the stronger the film is as a whole. That war films should practically be slice of life experiences. I think that's what made 1917 work really well. Dunkirk, even though it's based around a major incident, is about the sort of just the ways that different people were involved in it, but they weren't involved with the greater tide of the war. They were simply participants. And I think at a younger age, I struggled to encapsulate that. I struggled to understand why. I think I very much approached it from a grander narrative perspective, that I didn't see the value in watching films like Saving Private Ryan because I know how World War II ends. And that, I know that these characters aren't important in the context of World War II. However, what I now understand is that that's the kind of the point. It's the point that, a war film is no different than a workplace drama, except for the risk to life. And the thing that I think The Hurt Locker does so well is almost instill this sense of mundanity to the everyday experiences of these guys, working in Iraq, trying to interact with the locals, but keeping this strange distance from them, and I'll unpack that in a second, but, and the fact that it's just day-to-day, ways that people almost kill time until they are called to deal with a bomb, and then the film switches, and it's a case of, it becomes, a death-defying thriller when these men are trying to question whether they are going to be able to defuse a bomb, and if so, whether there will be consequences. And of course, the climate around them, and the fact that there are people around, and they don't know if those people are threats or just observers. And I think that's really the core of it, and the fact that these men have no idea how long their war will go on for. They have no idea what their contribution is. They simply go in as a bomb is once a bomb has been reported, and defuse it, and they just keep doing that again and again and again, and like I say, it becomes, their lives are almost mundane, and yet, like I say, there's also that thrill and adrenaline and fear and anxiety and all this sort of cocktail of emotions that they're having to process and almost normalize it. And I think that's the core of it. It's the idea of normalizing the abnormal. And I think this is also a sort of narrative about isolation and the idea that these guys are in a field where, they don't really have, even though they're part of a unit, they don't always necessarily get on with each other. They don't get on with the locals, and they're mistrustful of anyone who comes into the environment. I mean, there are scenes where, say, people will come up and start filming them defusing the bomb, and it's like, is this person filming just because they think they'll be able to throw it on social media, or is this someone filming because they're secretly, or not, they're part of Al Qaeda, and obviously this is a good video to then be able to declare, as a propaganda piece, and it's impossible to tell. There's no way of knowing, and so as they're trying to, and these guys aren't actively engaging people. Their job is simply to go in and defuse a bomb. So if there are people around, they can threaten them, they can have standoffs with them, but they need to essentially create a perimeter whilst the bomb is being defused. And again, it creates that sense of isolation. I mean, there are scenes where someone goes up to talk to Anthony Mackie at the beginning, and he just almost shoos him away and shouts him off because he just doesn't want, he needs to stay focused. And even outside of the bomb disposal, on a day-to-day basis, some of them, like Jeremy Renner's character, try to create local relationships, and yet it all collapses because they don't know on a day-to-day basis whether someone they're interacting with is going to become a threat or is going to be put into danger. And there is a character, this young boy that Jeremy Renner engages with several times, and the relationship he has with him reminds me of the film Tyrannosaur. And Tyrannosaur, it's not often I get to talk about it, but it is a film that is about bad things happening on a daily basis to just normal people. And there is a young boy character in it, and you are watching that film thinking, okay, the other shoe is going to drop, and I can't work out how. I don't know what context. This boy seems really sweet and innocent and kind and gets on with your main character, but something is going to happen, and you know it from point one. And in the same way, you're watching this thinking, is something going to happen to this boy? What's the context? And it does do some interesting things with that. It doesn't go melodramatic with it, but it's the way it pans out is quite interesting, and the way it affects Jeremy Renner. But there is that looming threat, and again, that isolates them. You also have other people who aren't their unit, who aren't soldiers, who aren't locals. Like Ray Fiennes, there's a section with him and a team of British mercenaries who essentially go in and capture the top 100 most wanted people in Iraq. And you think, these people who aren't soldiers are here simply for the glory or the money or whatever reason. And again, they are putting themselves into an incredibly hostile environment and a difficult environment. And you think, and you sort of, it makes you question what kind of person goes into it. And then you line them up against certain characters. Now, that are several of our leads. So you have Anthony Mackie, who is very professional, who knows exactly, is very by the book, and yet you can see the toll of doing this job is taking on him. Whereas you have Jeremy Renner, who's much more your maverick, who's much more, does things his own way, and you initially you're thinking, do I want to support this guy because is he putting himself and his colleagues in danger? It's unclear. Or is he actually really good at what he does because, again, the maverick thing? And again, it turns the tables on that, and you come to understand that whereas the one who follows the rules is slowly being chipped away by being in this environment, and the one who's constantly sort of going on his own path actually needs this, and he thrives on it, and he is built on the adrenaline of it. And slight spoiler towards the end, but you come to realise that that's, despite the fact that he has a life back home, this is it for him. This is the thing he lives for. And obviously there's some troubling subtext and commentary about that, and about, well, one is a better soldier, and yet the other one seems to thrive better, and yet neither of them, it becomes a question of whether either should be in that environment in the first place. And so, as I say, it's an incredibly powerful character drama, and a psychological study. And again, this is a real switch in the war genre as a whole. You know, Vietnam was a massive theme for a long time, and really influenced what a war drama looked like. Then there was sort of a return to sort of World War II war dramas, sort of in the late 80s, early 90s, when they'd started to tire of Vietnam. But this is the period where we see a shift within the war genre, where, you know, like I say, between Jarhead and The Hurt Locker, now we're examining modern warfare and how different that is. Whereas, you know, Vietnam, it was about sort of the madness of it all, and the sort of descent into madness being in that environment invokes. World War II was about the chaos and the sheer sense of bodies, and the fact that, you know, the general sense of a different kind of chaos, I suppose. That sense of you know, people throwing themselves at something that you know, practically they were human weapons. And this is very much about, is much slower and more mundane. As I say, it's more about the normalization and the fact that people are in the desert waiting for things to happen, and it's a very different kind of war film. And I think it's really, yeah, I think it's great. I genuinely, I think it is a phenomenal film. I was quite astounded by how much I appreciated it. I think it is such a strong film, and of course, Catherine Bigelow, being who she is, you know, has gone on for over a decade in demonstrating her abilities as a director. But I genuinely think this might be her strongest film that I've seen. No, genuinely a phenomenal film, and of course, all, you know, the cast are so good, and it is just such a shift within the genre. Yeah. Thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because it will help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 150 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about films and TV series, and I share these videos once they're uploaded on YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.